How to beat Scythe in 1 minute. Scythe's primary game plan is to build up damage through reading your dodges and KO you early off stage. Mixing up what you do after you get hit can reduce their confidence in getting your dodge, like sometimes attacking back right away instead of dodging, jumping instead of dodging, or changing the direction that you choose to dodge. All of those are effective strategies that make them have to guess more. Off stage, one of their biggest tools is the nair. After they hit you with a reverse nair, they have to guess whether you jump or not, so mix that up too. Sometimes jump, sometimes fast fall. And if you don't want to guess, they actually can't hit you if you jump away from them. Just be careful because you'll be further from the stage, so use it wisely. Also, study the range of down air, it's crucial. A lot of Scythe players will also wait for you to miss while hovering above you and hit you with that dare, so you can change up your movement, you can jump early to meet them in the air, or you can be a little bit more patient and wait for that final jump or dodge to come out before your grounded attack. And finally, be mindful of nervous dodging into instant attacks. That's often playing to the Scythe player's rhythm, and you end up getting punished even if they don't directly read your dodge. Take a half second to breathe, and then re-engage. You'll often be able to get an extra hit where you wouldn't otherwise. Quick, I have a 30-second important message. It's eggsoup here to tragically report that eggsoup has been turned into a marketable plushie. They actually did it. He's edible now. Pre-order starts now.
Oh yes!
He big, he chunky. He comes equipped with egg bowl hat. Put a hat on egg bowl hat. Join your other plushies. Tuck him into bed. Stare directly at the sun together. He will never die of old age. He is invincible. Oh, he's still pretty cool. He is limited edition. Once he is gone forever. Go to the link. Go to the link. Limited edition, limited edition, limited edition. Why do we have to fight each other? Why can't we all just get along? How to beat Axe in 1 minute. Axe wants to get you to the red with big sweeping individual hits and KO you with side air, neutral light, or an offstage scramble. So learning the range of all of those sweeping hits is key. How high up does neutral light hit? How far does a dash side light go? What's the vertical range of their recovery? Answering all of those questions can make fighting you much more frustrating for the Axe player. Like against Scythe, Axe players will often float above you and wait for you to make a hasty attack or spot dodge and punish. So you can disengage, you can jump early, you can wait out their final option, or you can read their movement and attack back. When you're close to getting knocked out, pay close attention to how the Axe player moves. Are they jumping to bait you into attacking so they can side air? Are they dashing back and forth hoping to squeeze in a neutral light or a heavy attack? If you can bait out their option first or preemptively guess what their movement is going to be and attack first, you'll be in a winning position. And be careful of the sidelight nair recovery trap. A lot of people will jump away after getting hit by sidelight nair and get KO'd way earlier than they otherwise would. Nair won't really ever knock you out, so don't panic after you get hit by it. Just be ready for a jumping side air and play it out based on what they do. But of all of these tips, the first one is really key. Learn that range. How to beat Spear in 1 minute. Spear cannot KO you from the ground. Endlight is not a knockout tool, sidelight is not a knockout tool, and downlight is a knockout tool, but it only hits in the air. That means Spear players will be looking for side airs close to the ground, on-stage ground pounds, or signatures once you clock into the red. So more than most other weapons, being acutely aware of what signatures your opponent is capable of bringing out is vital. By staying close to the ground and only jumping when truly necessary, you can extend your life against Spear by a huge margin. But that's only true if you aren't getting hit by their signatures. You want to make your opponent's job as hard as possible, so focus up on that grounded movement. Earlier in the stock, they'll get a lot of mileage out of sidelight in walling out your approaches with the big range of that double swing. You can interrupt between the first and second swing in dire situations, but most of the time it's safer to wait it out and punish after the second one. Or if you're not in position, accept that you're not going to be able to hit this one and try punishing what they do next. Because that sidelight, if spaced well, can be very challenging to actually punish, and then you'll get hit with an instant endlight or an instant downlight for your efforts. So a lot of people will panic jump way above it, but that's exactly how Spear walls you out with even more nairs and downlights. So grounded movement with careful jumps is really the name of the game here. How to beat Rocket Lance in 1 minute. In the most bare-bones summary possible, beating Lance is about beating side air. Frequently, that's how they're gonna build up a lot of damage, that's how they're gonna displace your position, that's how they're gonna knock you off stage, and that's how they're gonna take your stock. It's a frustrating move to fight because of how the Rocket Lance moves the user, so quick anti-airs are the key. Bow endlight, spear downlight, Katar downlight, axe downlight, orb endlight, and a myriad of other attacks and signatures can punish it, but you've got to be real quick and in the right spot, which is often not the case. Most Lance players choose to play a counterpunch style rather than being the primary aggressor, so you'll have to guess correctly how they prefer to block you off. Mix up your approaches because everything has an answer. Go from the ground, they can now prioritize with sidelight. Go above, and air will stop you in your tracks. Chase them down, and a jump dare will clip you first. But if you make them nervous by approaching with clean movement and they pick the wrong option, you've got an opening. So that's the key here. Don't approach with your attacks, approach with your movement. Last couple tips real quick. Like Spear, Lance can struggle to KO on the ground, so try not to jump without purpose and try not to rush when they're looking for grounded side airs. Finally, knocking out Lance off stage is actually really hard, but when they're nearly out of options, a well-placed weapon throw can steal that stock. How to beat Cannon in 1 minute. Cannon's bread and butter is building up damage through unconventional combos and punishes, and then finishing your stock off with a downlight to neutral air combo. So when fighting against it, you ideally want to prevent that damage buildup and avoid downlight at all costs once you get into KO percentage. Sidelight is generally the main approaching tool Cannon players use. They'll pace back and forth and then sidelight once you're in range. But the good thing is that you can actually interrupt this rhythm because they need to be at a specific range, otherwise they'll overshoot past you. Options like Katars, Bow, Orb, Scythe, Hammer, and Blaster's sidelight can all beat out Cannons if you time it correctly, and bonus if you dash first to cover more ground, since that's unreactable. Be very, very careful about your dodge usage against Cannon. Repeatedly dodging into the ground can become predictable, but sometimes eating 2 extra Cannon hits is better than the potential to eat 4 and even get KO'd early through a full stage carry when your dodge is on that full air cooldown. Remember, if you hit the ground during your dodge or immediately after, you get it back faster. Cannon down air is one of their most effective punishing and approaching options because of its size and angle, and it's also one of the ways they set up those dodge scenarios alongside the sidelight, so keep an eye out. And finally, learn the range of Sair. Since it's consistent, be careful about getting hit by recovery when you're guarding the ledge, be patient against their neutralites when you're on the wall, and try to jump out of their map-wide strings when you can. How to beat Blasters in 1 minute. Blasters build up damage by keeping you at bay with their range, and then KO you by searching for side airs and recoveries at high HP. Blaster's biggest strength is also their biggest weakness, and that's what you want to exploit. Yes, they do have crazy burst range on the ground with sidelight and safe poking options in the air with side air and down air, but that also means they have distinct blind spots. 45-degree angle attacks or diagonals are highly effective against blasters. Think of moves like Bow Dare, Lance Dare, Boots Dare, Orb Dare, and especially Scythe Dare because they are fantastic ways to initiate engagements against blasters. You'll often see blasters players try to circle around you, crossing through your character directly or from above in order to get that horizontal range advantage. They need to keep space and they want you to chase their shadow, so try not to give in. Maintain your position and attack where they're going to be rather than where they are right at that moment. Staying close to blasters also restricts their options. In order to get you away, they either have to jump down air or downlight, both of which are punishable if you predict it. And speaking of downlight, that is their #1 priority when you clock into the red. Depending on your opponent's proficiency, they may be able to downlight recovery, which KOs relatively early, but even if they can't, downlight Sair is still a clean KO combo, so you want to avoid that. Downlight is truly a high risk, high reward move. So as their enemy, you want to make them feel like the risk is higher and higher and higher. Be extra careful with your landings and approaches when you start getting into downlight's knockout percentage. How to beat Bow in 1 minute. If you haven't done this yet, memorize the range of Bow downlight. It's gonna be the most basic tip in here, but it's also the first thing to do because if you let them get away with it, Bow players are gonna approach you with downlight over and over and over again. Once you memorize it, you'll be able to see situations where they want to and are about to downlight very clearly, and then you can punish them. Bow can be one of the most challenging weapons to fight in Brawlhalla because it's one of the most versatile, but the foundational game plan for most Bow players still revolves around 2 things: tacking on damage with quick hits that get you to fall into their traps, and KOing with recovery. Dashback into sidelight is one of the single most common damage builders that Bow players use. You'll try to approach with an attack, but just get beat out by this rapid counter. But you have a few options. Attack earlier, where they're going to be, rather than where they are like you do against blasters players, although this requires a move with good reach. Get into range with your movement first and then attack, rather than approaching with the attack itself so that you can hit them before the sidelight even comes out. Or delay your approach by a fraction of a second by dashing backward, jumping, dodging, or even standing still, anything to change up the movement option you're currently holding, and that'll affect their timing. Take that mindset and apply it to every other one of Bo's moves, and now you're starting to focus on your movement more than purely attacking, and that's really the key to beating Bo. It's all about movement. And try not to get hit by that Bo recovery near the ledge. How to beat Orb in 1 minute. Orb desperately wants to build up damage quickly so it can KO you with a well-placed side-light side-air combo, and part of how they build up that damage is through pace control, or rhythm control as I often call it. They'll miss their attack and then instantly cover themselves with another attack while you're trying to punish the first one. And because of the way their range is designed, this can be a highly effective strategy. Whiff a Sair and instantly jump dare, whiff a neutral light and instantly sidelight. And when you get locked into this timing, you're playing to their rhythm. So snapping yourself out of that rhythm is key to defeat Orb players. Ask yourself, can I really punish this from where I'm standing right now? And if the answer is no, focus on what their next move is going to be, because often it's not as well spaced or not as well prepared as their first one. Maybe they instantly attack again, maybe they jump, maybe they dodge. And all of this goes double for when you're on the ledge. Getting through the timing of Orb's dare Sair can be frustrating, but there is a gap that you can pass through or even attack through. And getting off the ledge is extra important because if you're not off stage, Orb cannot KO for a long time. If you do end up finding yourself there, be careful being in the diagonal angle below them. Their ground pound is slower and a bigger commitment, so staying directly underneath is usually safer, and if you can get above them, the recovery doesn't have that much range, so your down airs can often clash at the very least and get a solid reversal on the situation. How to beat Greatsword in 1 minute. Greatsword is at its best when it has a series of reads it can rely on, because that's not only how it builds up damage most effectively, it's how it can KO you faster than any other weapon. That means you want to build up your defensive toolkit so the Greatsword player has to guess from a wider pool of options. So here are some things you can do. Mix up when you choose to dodge. Greatsword players often go for the 1-2-3 string, so sometimes dodge immediately, and sometimes tank the second hit on purpose so you can escape the third one more reliably. Most Greatsword players will have the dodge read after the first hit practiced, but not really the second. And you can also mix up whether you choose to dodge at all. In, out, to the ground, to the air, spot dodge for longer invincibility, spot dodge into gravity cancel wake up for a high risk, high reward counterpunch. You have a lot of options. Attacking immediately can work if they're going for a read right away, although it usually doesn't work twice in a row, so use it sparingly. And jump out if they're going for that sliding second hit, because that big sidelight finisher that takes your stock super early, sometimes it's a little inconsistent, can't pick people up in the air, and then they're forced to go for the end light finisher instead, which does KO later. But that's all reactive defensive measures. Proactively, you also want to be careful about how they cover their whiffs. Try not to get baited by their spot dodges. This is something that a lot of Greatsword players do, so instead of going for a falling aerial attack in that situation, you can land on the ground first and then go for a grounded attack. And if you stay real close to them, Greatsword users will often feel pressured to attack preemptively, and that's when you can punish, because they're not doing it in a spot they want. How to beat Katars in 1 minute. Katars are amazing at building up damage, but because they struggle to knock you out, they want to push you off stage or land a high force heavy attack to remain efficient. Restricting their damage buildup and remaining calm at high percentage values are therefore your biggest priorities. One of Katars' most common traps is the vortex, attacking into attacking when you try to hit them in between their gaps. Much like Scythe and Orb, this strategy relies on you playing to their rhythm. And even if you can escape one of their dodge setups, you might find yourself getting dodge punished anyway for trying to hit them immediately. They whiff end light and then instantly down light and you get looped, or they whiff down air and then instantly end light and you get looped. So it goes. More than most weapons, resetting against Katars is often your safest strategy. After dodging, try to be hyper aware. Is the reason why you're wanting to attack right away because of the chance of an instant dopamine hit in case it succeeds? Or is it actually the right play since you can squeeze in a hit fast enough? Taking literally 1 single second to disengage can be the difference between getting looped over and over and over again, or landing your Sair. Once you get into the red, Katars cannot KO you immediately from the ground. Endlight, sidelight, and downlight all set up into a recovery scenario, but that is something you can dodge. So place part of your mind to focus on dodge cooldown and direction, and place the other on their signature kit. Otherwise, real quick, dash sidelight is their most consistent burst option, so learn that range, and recovery has a deceptive amount of priority, so be very careful when edgeguarding. How to beat battle boots in 1 minute. Boots specialize in getting you into uncomfortable situations by changing your position to their whim. Your best form of defense then is preparation. After they sidelight or downlight, you can either end up on the ground or in the air, depending on which route they go. After they dare, you can either end up in a dodge or jump read scenario, or far below them trying to recover. After they sare, you can be put in a dodge read scenario, or be safe enough distance away to leap back on stage. The point that I'm making here is the less you panic and the more you look at each scenario objectively, the less you'll be overwhelmed by the speed in which you're being carried away. And then you can focus more on what's really important: your dodge timing and directions, your jump timing and direction, and properly positioning your counterattacks where you want to hit them rather than where you've been placed to try hitting them. Boots can cover itself quite well with Endlight, one of its essential tools. Whiffed Sare into Endlight, whiffed Sidelight into Endlight. If you notice your opponent frequently going for this option, wait a hair and punish that instead of their first move, since you'll probably be in a better position by that point anyway. Many Boots players also toss out Sidelight to approach since it covers so much ground so quickly, but the further away from you they start, the more predictable it becomes. Notice if they're approaching you with movement or merely approaching you with an attack. Because for many Boots players, the moment you're a dash away, they'll immediately Sidelight. And that's something you can anticipate and punish. How to beat Sword in 1 minute. Sword is a straightforward jack of all trades that can be played in a million different ways, but because it's so straightforward, you can bank on a few strategies to help with nearly every player. Sword loves to juggle with nair and recovery, so stay above the vertical range of the nair and punish when your opponent commits to the higher risk recovery. Most people tend to try attacking right away and end up getting hit 2, 3, 4 extra times as a result, so try not to fall into that trap. Offstage is where Sword can tack on a bunch of damage by keeping you away from the map. Alternating endlights and downlights is perhaps the most common ledge trap tool of any weapon, so learn those ranges, pay attention to the gaps in between, and leap up with a counterattack Sare if the opportunity is given to you. Weapons like bow and cannon tend to have an easier time because of their recovery's priority, but good timing can still interrupt it, so be careful. Mashing your jump off stage is maybe the #1 mistake against Sword, as its dare ground pound string is perfectly designed to beat that. This pattern does tend to trail off at higher levels, but you should still be aware no matter where you are on the ladder, because an unexpected option can often be a highly effective one. And finally, remember that side air has a second swing that extends further out than the first one. Watch out for downlights at high HP, as that's their go-to KO option, and try not to get frustrated if they cover themselves with endlight after missing an attack. That's a very common one. Shift your focus to waiting it out or tightening up your timing for the next one. How to beat Hammer in 1 minute. Fighting Hammer is like fighting a boss with a series of skill checks. There's the swinging side air mode, the swinging neutral air mode, the dashing sidelight, the cover everything with another attack, chip away while running away, and of course the wall hugging mode, among a bunch of others. Everything has an answer to beat it, but it's not easy to apply all of it in real time. Here's what you can do. Side air and neutral air are reactable, so when you're in the range of it possibly hitting, try not to lock yourself into long attacks that can be punished with an even bigger counter. Instead, focus your actual eyes' vision on your opponent's character model I don't know if that's right, and see whether or not they're going for those windups, and then you can reposition yourself accordingly. Sidelight, downlight, and endlight don't have an answer for a diagonal aerial approach, so if you can catch your opponent on the ground, that's fantastic. But often, Hammer players will jump in position underneath you with a nair or Sare to avoid that situation, meaning it's back to focusing on the previous positioning. If you look closely, actually none of Hammer's moves have a direct answer to diagonals, so that's where you'll out-prioritize with your bow endlights or your scythe dares. Generally though, attacking Hammer before they have a chance to, or during their recovery time, is a safer option. Just be mindful of your timing when you finally do get that opening, because that could lead to an instant endlight or a downlight if you're not fast enough. The one situation I'd say to be the most careful about is off stage. Recovery wins against pretty much anything that could directly contest it, so sometimes backing off and staying patient is the right call. Otherwise, be careful of those flying Sares and punishing downlights in high percentage, and get those hits where you can. How to beat Gauntlets in 1 minute. Gauntlets often need a read to take your stock, so focusing on avoiding those will make your opponents have to work significantly harder to beat you. The great thing is how they take your stock and how they build up damage often have similar setups, meaning this will work for mitigating hits as well. Pay attention to your dodge and make sure you're landing on the ground to get the reduced cooldown, because sidelight into recovery KOs if you don't have it. If you do, sidelight into gravity cancel sidelight forward or backward is the most common route Gauntlet players go for, and it covers nearly every dodge option. Mix-ups are the key here. There's no one right dodge, there never is in Brawlhalla, so pay attention to which patterns you keep following. Most players tend to dodge in a direction they're already holding without realizing it, but if you mix that up with instant pivots to another direction, you can keep your opponent guessing and leave them open to a counterattack. fake outs. Additionally, the up in dodge is often really difficult for sidelight to hit afterwards since you need to commit early. So if you can tell your opponent is going for a read that looks for most of the options, pick something like this that's not among that group. Against Greatsword and Gauntlets especially, you'll also want to pay attention to your dodge timing, when you choose to dodge. Because it's a string-based weapon, players will often wait, assuming you'll dodge and then hit you with what they've practiced. But if you change up the timing of how long you wait after getting hit before dodging, and this can even be a tiny little sliver of a hair of time, they can be completely thrown off. Your ultimate goal here is to reduce their consistency. And the last little tip is to not panic off stage. Mashing jump will lead you to getting nair, ground pound, sair, nair, ground pounded all the way to a loss. Take a little bit of a breath, as I clearly need to do. How to beat Unarmed in 1 minute. Unarmed often gets overlooked by Brawlhalla players, but it can be incredibly powerful in the right hands. Some weapons don't have the easiest KO route, so Unarmed works great to finish the stock, and it can build up damage effectively through early HP strings if you're not careful. If you've ever gone full autopilot while in queue and the bot hits you with 4 unarmed downlights in a row, then you're well aware of its ability to interrupt. And that's where the key in fighting it lies. Number 1, focus up. Just because someone is going unarmed doesn't mean you should get angry right away. Even if you interpret that as a sign of disrespect, it is part of the game, and it's an effective strategy. So gear in. Number 2, don't autopilot. I guess this is kind of similar to the first one, but your weapons outrange unarmed. They out-prioritize it not just from your hitboxes, but literally in the code of the game. Anytime you hit each other at the same time, a weapon automatically wins against unarmed. They got stubby arms. Take advantage of it and don't autopilot like it's any other weapon. You can play against unarmed differently than you play against everything else. And number 3, be aware of those interrupts. Unarmed is maybe the best weapon, if you can call it a weapon, at breaking apart string weapons at low HP, because very rarely will anything else be faster. If you're playing Scythe, Boots, Katars, Gauntlets, be aware that an instant nair or dare might turn your combo into theirs. Either fully commit to your string or play around that instant attack. Off stage, gravity cancel downlight ground pound is an amazing finisher, but sometimes you can fast fall underneath it, neutral air, and get a chase dodge back to stage. Just because your opponent is positioning like you're doomed doesn't mean you actually are. And finally, they're going to be looking for side sig, down sig, and downlight at KO percentage on the ground, all of which are punishable. The one you really have to be attentive to is recovery, because it's deceptively large with an ability to get underneath weapons blind spots. This is a great move. And one last tip for every single matchup is this. Remember that you're not playing against a weapon, you're playing against a person. Yes, the person is restricted to the moves that weapon has, but at the end of the day, they're going to make decisions. And they're going to make those decisions based on experience, emotions, game state, reads, reaction, preparation, improvisation, and a million little neurons firing in sequence in a fraction of a second. You're essentially playing a big game of rock, paper, scissors. Sometimes you'll guess wrong. But if you can guess right more than they guess right, you'll be the one hoisting up the trophy. Good luck, gamers. I'll see you when I see you.